Zabuni Specialty Coffee Auction. That's my lovely wife back there, Njuguna. Yeah, we're the ones who decided to get into this and start this. I have to run. I have a couple of friends back there. Come here, guys. Actually, let's sit down. Let me take a picture if you guys do that. Before you come this way. So I have a couple of friends, one from Ethiopia and one from Ghana. Come here, guys, real quick. I just wanted to say hello to you guys. These two are both the presidents of the Asian African Chamber. Salam is the president in Kenya of the Asian, though she's Ethiopian, she's the president of the Asian African Chamber in Kenya. And Mark is the president of the Asian African Chamber in Ghana. So they're here visiting, and that's why we have to take off because we gotta head to Omaha.
Where are you visiting from? I mean, you came
I came from Ghana.
Ghana?
She came from Kenya.
So they're just here to say hello. Anyway, for me, I just wanted to say welcome. I hope you learned something while you're here. And when you go back, for all those of you who are on social media and everything, just share about us and let people know how we do. I'm going to leave you in pretty good hands. My wife is going to take good care of you.
Yep.
Ask her as many questions as you can and want to ask, but it's a pleasure meeting you guys. I hope we'll pass close to it. I think I saw a couple of you when I was there for the thing in Lincoln.
The meal?
Was it African night? Oh, was it African?
Yeah, it's African night.
African night.
February 7th, yeah.
African night. So I did see some of you guys, some faces over there. But before I leave, any questions for me? Because I'm going to take off. I'm also from Kenya originally, so I'm a transplant to central Nebraska by way of marriage. So I have 4 little ones. They're in school right now. But yeah, Nebraska is home. And so
You picked up most of the accent.
yeah, I tried to.
I take credit for that because when we first started dating, his accent was so thick I could barely talk to him on the phone.
Persevere through it. So I code switch. When I'm talking to my people, I talk like them. When I'm talking to
Your people.
Believe it or not.
people,
Your people.
our people, my people as well. They're all my You just have to do it. You can't procrastinate. If you think about something, you have to do it. Whether you figure the whole thing out or not, you've got to start and you have to do it. And then persevere. It's not easy, but you got to persevere, especially when you're dealing with different sets of cultures, influences, people. You just have to do it. I've failed many times and I've gotten comfortable with failing, so I'm not one of those people who doesn't get into something because I'll fail. Yeah, I'll get in happily knowing I'll fail, but it's okay. We learn from that process. It makes us stronger. Gives us, it's encouraging to me, even to some extent, when you fail and figure something or figuring out how to do something, so that next time you figure out how to do it right. So for me, business is about perseverance, and it's about doing. You got to do it. You just have to do it. So whatever you're thinking about,
I congratulate you on what you've done. We met in Lincoln.
yes, I remember that.
I think that you had a big business big, so on my end, congratulations.
Oh, well, thank you. I don't know about big, but it is a business and it's working. We're working on growing it big though. So we need you guys to help us get there.
And I should invite you to Tanzania now to export some, take the coffee from Tanzania.
To come to Tanzania? Let's do it. I'm always down for traveling and I like eating, I think you can tell. Experience different.
Yeah.
Nearest my heart. Too many years ago, I wanted to say no.
Not as
But
many as me.
I actually went and I got a degree in education, math education, and used it for all of about 3 years, and then followed other pursuits. So, how many minutes do you have here? I need to know.
Like 45 minutes, an hour.
Okay, it's probably about 2:15. Okay. So, I'm not exactly sure what you all like. Are you your business, or what would you like to hear about? Any particular, just whatever?
Tell us how you got started.
Sure. So we got started in coffee. This is the backwards part. Both my husband and I are not coffee drinkers. We kind of are now. But when we started, like it's drunk all over the world. But Kenya has a tea drinking culture, like British milk tea. And so he didn't drink coffee. My family is German, so my greater family are addicted to coffee, but my mom in particular didn't like it, so I never had any in my house. I was probably 30 before I ever tasted coffee. And so it was not a natural thing for us. A lot of people who get into the coffee industry get into it because they have another profession. Like nobody goes to college thinking, I'm going to major in coffee. At least it wasn't a thing back then. I don't know if it is now. But it was, for us, kind of accidental. We both had other career fields and other pursuits. But on one of Laban's trips back to Kenya, he was visiting rural areas, like now where his family elders were from. And some farmers kind of knew that he was coming, knew that he lived in America, knew that he was a business person, and had said, we need a market for our coffee. Can you help us find buyers in America to buy our coffee? And at that point, he didn't know anything about coffee, didn't really like coffee, but how do you walk away from a chance to help somebody? So he was just kind of like, well, I'll see what I can do. And so when he came back home, he was traveling a lot for work. So he'd stop at these different coffee shops in these different cities around the Midwest of the US and ask the coffee shop owners, would you like to buy some Kenyan coffee? Because I know some people trying to sell some. Would you like to buy some Kenyan coffee? And found out that it's not just quite that simple. The logistics process, the international trade, the culture, language barriers, all these kinds of things. These are all barriers for farmers being able to find people for their coffee, which is why they rely heavily on, marketers to do all of that and dealers to do all of that. In contrast, my own dad here is a farmer, and he grows organic popcorn. So for regular field corn, there's the cooperatives, and we've got all these local cooperatives that are dealing with it. But for my dad, he doesn't deal with any cooperative. Like he stores, dries, processes, and markets his own popcorn for himself. And so he's able to go out and find buyers and find contracts and do that exchange directly. So there's nobody in between him and the people who are directly buying popcorn. And he's able to negotiate those contracts. But the farmers in Kenya with their coffee, they had too many people in the middle. The millers have to take a cut, the marketers have to take a cut, the dealers, exporters, importers, warehousers, roasters, everybody's having a cut. But probably the smallest cut gets back to the people doing most of the work and most of the investing, right? And so that was something that Laban said, hey, now that I understand more what the challenges are and why the problems are there, I think we have to do something to try to help. And this feels like an overwhelming problem because you're talking about like not just a whole country, but countries who are all experiencing different yet similar problems. And we're just two people who didn't have a whole lot of money to invest. If I had $1 billion to start out with, I could have solved it overnight. So what he mentioned about failing, we tried, first of all, doing a more traditional method, bringing in investors, trying to go buy coffee, turn around, come and resell it. And what we found out is the people with the money always make the rules. They make the money and they make the rules. Because once we brought in additional investors, we were kind of beholden to do what they wanted to do because they wanted return. And in the end, they talked a big talk, like a lot of people do, about wanting to help people at the origin, but their first and foremost priority was always their own pocketbook. And so, we would get coffee, they would sort of sell it wherever they wanted to, whatever terms. We didn't really like how it was going. In the end, we sort of walked away. The farmers didn't end up getting helped, and we just said, phooey. So, when we had a second opportunity to get back into it, we said, okay, we're going to have to use a completely different model. The traditional way is not working for us. So that's kind of where we started with doing a lot of research into like, okay, well, how do, not just coffee, but how do any products make it, where they're going, and how do we establish a fair price? So for us, you'll see in our name, we deal with just specialty coffee, which is the top about 5 to 7% of the most quality coffee in any crop year. So there's an official like industry rubric. So when you look at the coffee beans, when you taste them, when you smell them, they have to have a certain objectively scored quality to them to count as specialty. And we only deal with the top tier. Whereas most of the coffee in the world is either commodity grade, perhaps even low grade or off grade, or premium grade, some of those lower tiers, right? So for commodity products, which is the bulk of stuff, there's already C markets, and there's already commodity exchanges and futures contracts and all that, financial instruments that are out there. But for the really quality coffee, there's not anything that sort of establishes a fair price. So here's what I equate it to. I use the example a lot of like quilting. So I can walk into Walmart and I can find a beautiful warm quilt to go on my bed. But I know that if I'm buying a quilt off the shelf at Walmart, somebody somewhere probably produced it in the thousands or the millions of identical things with the cheapest materials possible. See what I'm saying? Whereas if I go now to a handmade quilt shop, I know every square of that fabric was intentionally chosen, was handcrafted, was lovingly put together. I can see there's imperfections in the stitches, but in a way it almost makes it more beautiful, right? Because it's hand done. But if I go to a handmade quilter and I say, look, I've been out there in the market, I've seen in the stores, quilts run about $50 for a queen size quilt. So that's what your quilt is worth. It really isn't. You're talking about the same product, but you're not talking about the same product, right? So same thing with specialty coffee. The fair trade certified coffees, they say that anything that's like, there's a certain premium. So they take the commodity price and they add a certain premium. And I don't pay that much attention anymore. Last time I checked, it was like 30 cents. Anything over 30 cents or more per pound over commodity, whatever the commodity going rate is, that's fair. And our take is, if you're producing commodity coffee and you get a premium of 30 cents, that probably is fair. It's a good step in the right direction. But if you're producing, hand-picked, hand-sorted specialty coffees, 30 cents per pound is not even close to fair, right? You're barely breaking even at that point. So our mechanism was, okay, so how do we get the coffee from Africa here, and how do we get the money back home? And really the only way to do it was to be able to have a mechanism whereby farmers can export their coffee mostly themselves. There's always got to be some people in the middle. I still need my shippers, I still need my millers, but how many steps of that supply chain can be reduced? And how can I transparently send money back? So kind of our goal was to consolidate coffee into containers while it's in Kenya, move containers here, warehouse them here, instead of warehousing them there, so that when buyers want coffee, they don't have to travel all the way to Kenya to search for it. And then when you're shipping it, I can ship a container for about the same price as I can ship a few pallets. So if I can kind of consolidate things, warehouse it from here and sell it off from here, I make a much more direct sale. So that's kind of our goal, is to connect farmers to roasters by having a sort of a place here where they can come to meet. There's a lot of improvements that need to be made in the system, I'll tell you that right now. But that's what we're trying to do in a nutshell. So, any questions so far?
Are you doing your own roasting?
Yes, we do our own roasting, again, by accident. Kind of what happened was we wanted to work with green coffee, but Grand Island, they kept putting us in the headlines. Every time the politicians would come over, because and that's another thing. Like here, if my dad wants to sell popcorn, he doesn't need the government to get in the middle. Like he just goes out and finds the contracts and sells his coffee. On the Kenyan side, there's a lot more government involvement in all this industry. So you have to have a license, you have to have, all these things. So the government gets a lot more involved. So in order to do what we wanted to do, we really sort of needed the the blessing and cooperation of the government officials to not block us. Some things had to change. So we ended up inviting a lot of politicians to come over here, befriending them, having long conversations with them, changing a few rules, getting things done. Every time we'd have delegations come from Africa, it would make the local newspaper, hey, look who we've got visiting our lovely town. And people would read the headlines like specialty coffee auction coming to town. Nobody would actually, I think, read the articles because I had so many people coming up to me and saying, I can't wait to taste your coffee. I can't wait to try it. And I'm like, I don't think they've read it because they get as far as coffee and then they tune out. We were never planning to have coffee, roast coffee, have a coffee shop. But in the end, this community did a lot to support us, that poured a lot of funding, a lot of excitement, a lot of connections, like local business connections and business association connections that helped us get started. So to have all the coffee come in and then go out without sharing any here seems sort of rude. So Laban looked at me and said, we're gonna have to buy a roaster and we're gonna have to figure out how to roast coffee. And I was like, whoa, you just changed my whole business model and I'm not interested. He's like, no, it's okay. It's only like $15,000. So I was like, okay. So he bought a roaster. He spent all summer asking people to come and help him figure out how to run it. We set it up, and looking back, it's a really good thing that we did, because what we didn't know when we opened at the end of November in 2019 was that we would only be in business for like 3 or 4 months before COVID shut us down. We were not prepared for that. We were on a shoestring startup budget. We were already 5 months behind schedule launching due to logistics problems. We panicked and thought, how on earth, what are we gonna do? So basically he just fired up the roaster and we put a lot of our resources into now value-added products. We wanted to do all wholesale, which is thin margins, high volume. We couldn't do it, so we started doing higher margin, lower volume as kind of a plan B. So it kept us open. It actually sort of probably boosted us because a lot more people in this geographic area consume roasted coffee than green coffee. We've, on it transparently here, we've had a really big hard time switching back. Once we were fully invested and now we had a roastery by the time the pandemic lifted, and it took 2 to 2.5 full years before a lot of those coffee trade shows started happening again to where we could get back out there. So I mean, really, we've only been open 3.5 years. Most of it has been in an environment where coffee shops are on shaky ground. A lot of our trade shows, competitions, networking events have all been canceled. We've had a really hard time now finding the skilled, knowledgeable help to keep the roasting and e-commerce side going, to now shift back to the wholesale, to the auction process. So we haven't actually had auctions in a while, even though we believe in our hearts that is the system. We are still allowing farmers to set their minimum price. We're still selling green coffee. We've had to step back from the model that we really want to go to. And so at this point, I think we're looking at what other kind of from other countries or other parts of the US, how can we bring in the help that we need to keep this e-commerce and roasted coffee side here, but really focus on what it is that we're passionate about. So it really is. But Grand Island in particular has been very welcoming and very helpful to us. So we got some LB 840 money, which is a government grant. Grant's not the right word, funding to get started. So there have been challenges. I wish there was more housing available. I wish there was more, stuff. However, if I tried to do this exact same thing in a bigger city, if I went to Kansas City or Chicago or whatever and did this exact same thing, I would never have been able to get started. I could not have gotten the square footage of warehouse that I needed, all the other, you know what I'm saying? Like, I just couldn't have even afforded this building. We got this building, we bought it, and you haven't seen downstairs, but I can show you. There's a pretty large warehouse downstairs. We have about 29,000 square feet in this building, and we bought it for $450,000.
Wow.
I mean, I couldn't do that in a bigger city. I could have just never gotten started.
All
So
communities across Nebraska have this
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
square footage at those
Yeah.
kinds of prices.
yeah, it's
Startup costs or fixed costs were much lower than if she had started her business in Kansas City or Chicago. So that's what she's trying to say. So that was the advantage of this place. The disadvantage is finding some of the skilled labor that you need
Right.
to help make your business grow and attracting them to Grand Island.
I think there are probably another dozen businesses that I can tell you, every last one of them has the exact same complaint about finding labor.
But look, these guys are the smartest people in their countries right now, and one of the things that they wanna do is put their roots down where they can live and grow.
on a personal note. Obviously, my husband is an immigrant, and we see a lot of the benefits of it. I'm sorry to say that in my extended family, those sentiments aren't always there. You know, there's a lot of, well, shouldn't Americans come from, like, and I keep thinking, but you know that your own grandparents were, like, I mean, you're not that many generations, how many, like 3-4 generations that we've been here, like, are you guys that,
Well, but
you
that's,
know,
that's.
but
the
it's
other piece of it
political
is-
and it gets really messy. But one of the things that we've strongly advocated for as business owners is like making that immigration process easier, because even I call him a brother. He's not really a blood brother, but he came as a student from Korea and basically got adopted into our family. And you know, and my parents couldn't believe how difficult it has been for him to stay here. And they're like, but these are the kind of people we need. I'm like, I mean, it's amazing to me the disconnect that you find in some people's brains between, like, you know, talking about immigrants, but none of you know what I'm saying? Like, as though there's a difference. And so that's been one of the things that we've been trying to be more vocal about, is that we need to bring in.
Obviously isn't right to bring home, because 3.5% is nothing.
Yeah, and
But I do have to say, collectively, I hate talking to people's backs. Our current governor, who was just elected, population of this state, which is 1.9 million. In 2020, they just did a census, and 100 years ago, the population was like 1.7 million. We've only grown the population of this empty state that we just drove through, 200,000 people in 100 years.
Wow.
So guys, the whole issue was the Irish people. They came from Ireland. Why did they come from Ireland? They had no potatoes to eat anymore. They were dying of starvation. They all got on boats and stuff and came over here. This was not very long ago. There's entire towns, O'Neill, Nebraska, that is all Irish. They have more twins up there per capita and more red-headed people per capita than any
Republican states. People sort of keep the party line for the most part. Lincoln, you've got a little bit better. Move out here, you'll know what I mean. But I know that behind the scenes, they realize of the city leaders in this town have pulled together to hire lobbyists to go to legislature and advocate for more immigration and bringing people in, of relaxing our tone and our rules. The frustrating part is, I think if Nebraska could just make their own rules, I think we could be reasonable, and I think we could make the board over there that has like the grading charts. So we do this both for buyers to come in and they know what they're buying, and also for the public, for social groups, for coworkers, friends, date nights, whatever, for people to come in and learn how this process goes. So kind of learn what we're looking for in coffee, what makes it good or bad. So this is just kind of a preview of, you can always come back on a different day
So
and say, hey, we
this is
want
for
to.
different countries of Africa.
So right now, the only two countries we have coffee from are Kenya and Ethiopia.
Oh.
Are these all different varieties of coffee?
These are
or from different farms?
a mix of different the seed varieties, but different farms, different areas.
Right, I recognize a lot of them because I spent 5 years there, but.
Sure, and every area is gonna have a little bit different flavors. And
Bless you.
all you guys agriculture people know just how much that's gonna be affected by sun and soil and everything.
And there's so much change in altitude depending on where you go within Kenya. For example, my favorite park there has 3 different kinds of forests in one park.
3 different kinds of
Forests. You've got evergreens, you've got deciduous, and you've got tropical forests in one park because there's 4,000 foot of vertical drop in that park.
interesting.
Yeah.
So Ethiopia and
Yes, these, when you see them paired up together, it's the same thing, roasted, unroasted. So this is what we're calling the green coffee.
Unroasted,
Green coffee.
So when they're and we have to grind it and then add hot water.
There is.
There is a paper
So
trail
why
on
do
the
they
parchment. There is a shell. It's already been taken out. They have a machine.
So they were like individually grown.
Excuse me.
So, right, so if you think about these are like 2 halves, and if you put them together, that's the center, those are the seeds from the coffee tree cherries. It's called cherry and it comes off, so it's a fruit. It grows on a tree like a fruit. It looks like a grape or a cherry. It's a little red thing with these in it. But when you take the shell off, then they kind of fall apart, just like a peanut would fall apart.
And so then for specialty,
This one is Kenyan.
yeah, they would just go
Yeah.
Now
And I
that
think
would
almost,
be graded as well.
It doesn't have any smell.
Yeah.
and I think all is, and it actually lasts longer. So like these that are grown at high altitude, they stay fresh longer, whereas some that are like, you know how fast bread will stale? So like inside the coffee bean, even if it looks the same, if it's not as dense, it tends to stale within, even 9 months or a year, whereas some of these coffees can last a lot longer than that if you keep it in good condition.
That's why you'll notice is the location mentioned on the coffee is a mountain.
This is so fascinating because the whole, the whole thing is just super fascinating, what you're doing.
Why these three doesn't have a partner?
Because that one, we didn't have enough of it to even roast it. And if you see that tray it looks like a round ball, whereas these look like a half a circle or a half a semi.
Sure.
So those are what we call pea berries.
I was gonna say
So that's a naturally occurring defect where the 2 seeds, instead of splitting, they stay one, and they're typically a lot smaller. So they're like the size of one bean, but they're actually 2 that are stuck together, and those are more desirable for flavor. But I can't grow it on purpose. If you can figure out how to grow it on purpose, then there's a market for that. But,
somebody sorts all of the pea berries out.
well, those are sorted out by size. So if you look closely, you'll probably find some pea berries that are bigger mixed in with all these, but it's machine sorted like and it sort of shakes it out. So Kenya sorts their coffee beans by size, and they say like the biggest size AA, AB, whatever. And that's why the PBs are there, is they kind of shake out toward the bottom. But mostly because of marketing. Everybody comes in and says, I want Kenya AA, I want AA. Because in America, A is good, so AA has to be, And I tell them, if you taste the AAs and you taste the ABs, most of the time the ABs taste better. But they don't even care. They're willing to pay more for the second grade so that they get to write AA on the package, because everybody knows AA.
Because nobody
And I'm
wants
saying,
ABs.
right. So our ABs are actually better in taste.
So this is EB.
But
That-
So
I
that's
gotta give me
So
some
who
of this.
grade it? Like, did you grade them?
no, that's just an
Okay,
indication of the
That's
size.
a region within
That's just
Kenya.
Hmm.
But
This is the name
Ethiopia,
of the farm
where's my
involved.
Ethiopian?
Here's a
So it's
Ethiopians
probably all Arabic
did
or
not,
coffee, but
they
that's
don't
still
sort by
European.
size.
Hmm.
They sort by quality grade. So they just group it all together and then they taste it. So grade 1, highest quality grade, and then down
Yeah.
the row. So it's really an interesting education piece for people when they come in to buy coffee because, AA is not necessarily the best grade, but grade 1, just the different ways that the different countries do it.
So remember when
So-
our friend was talking, this is the process that she had to learn, the roasting.
Yeah.
And just in 2 days, but then a lifetime to.
And
to
I
gain
joke
all
with
this time.
because there's people. I was a math teacher. I've forgotten more math than many people have ever learned. I have actually. I can show you the lab real quick. So I have an iPad hooked up to my roasting machine that tracks the temperature of the bean probes and the airflow. And it does this thing for me. And now you'll see a lot of roasters getting online and they're looking at the rate of rise, the time temperature curves, where does it flatten out, where does it dip. And I joke with my friends who are coffee roasters, did you know that you were going to be using calculus like in your professional lives? And they're not doing the formulas, but that's what they're talking about, even though they don't know that's what they're doing. And I'm saying you probably never knew that in your 50s you were going to pick up calculus as a hobby so that you could get the better coffee.
I love
So-
this,
Wow.
she's a coffee chemist.
Amazing.
We have
No, that
a food
is way too
science
generous.
department.
Yeah.
That is your department. So.
Yeah,
Nice.
the University of Nebraska is a system for providing like a document to students who want to work with any company. There is a CPT and OPT. Are you willing to receive students to work with you? And
I mean, I need more details, but yes.
Yeah, that's good. The
Yeah, yeah.
internship, because I work with the university and global learning hub, and I met with the employers. They say we are ready to work with the international students. Make them to us.
Yeah.
So I'll be your ambassador, talking to other people, to students. Yes, and I will connect them with you. If students want.
College guys, because businesses were so eager for internships that they decided to compact the college curriculum into like 3 years so that your whole 4th year is just an internship.
Right.
And now they're building housing just so that they can actually bring the interns here.
Nice.
So, I mean, I don't know. I have my own personal philosophical thoughts about it, which I'll leave out of the conversation. But from a business owner perspective, I can see why they're doing what they know which one has the citruses on. Very citrusy coffees are common in Kenya. So when people come in and they're like, my favorite coffee is Colombian Robusta.
Yes, yeah.
Which one tastes like that? And I'm like,
Yeah.
none of them. It's not the same, and I'm not gonna try to tell you that it is the same because it's not. So I think this like big scale manufacturing, that's my roaster. I can do 9 pounds at a time, and that's my limit. But I can do the one that says XE on it.
It's how you pick up the different income streams, cut out the middle supply chain issues, and pick up more income streams.
So it's really just your basic coffee shop setup.
That is your
So
flask.
sorry, go ahead.
There you go.
Oh, it's cool. Fun place.
Yeah, don't forget to post on social media. Zabuni, man.
Things like that, and then you get up into,
The elevator was already here. And because we're
Sidamu Bombay.
Damo Bombay. This is like a special group. Kenya, Africa, Ethiopia.